Hello and welcome to our daily sketching routine. It is Saturday, July the 5th, 2025, and today's topic I'm going to be using a pencil, so a pencil landscape sketching. But before we begin, welcome back if you're returning and welcome if you're new to the channel. I sketch and post every day and I use a timer to stay focused and to build a habit. I'll start a 10-minute timer. To start off with, this was from yesterday's video, which I'll link in the description. I could have gone in and detailed it, but I wanted to leave it, and then sometimes I prefer this look, and also it's helpful like later on to kind of see like the steps or like the process. So for example here, so these are from reference, and today will also be from reference. So it's basically the same thing here if you want to see how I did that with more detail, obviously, and like just kind of filling in the colors. But like I was saying, like this isn't too bad either, and that took about almost an hour. So this one took about 10 to 15 minutes and like another hour to just kind of, part of it is figuring out like what the colors do, so it just kind of take your time with it. But yeah, so today I'm going to keep the idea of the landscape, so I'll put this into the environments playlist. I don't know what else to call it. It's not just landscapes, it's also interiors and stuff. So I'll do like a pencil sketch here, and I wanted to do that because sometimes it's kind of fun to use a pencil. Also, you can erase. Today I just found another picture of a castle, so I'm just going to stick with like that theme for now. One thing you can do is if you want to get more into, because on these I just went in with like the pen. A pencil obviously you can erase, but if you want to get more into that look of like just drawing straight like with a pen, then you can use a pencil. In this case I just have a mechanical pencil, and use it kind of like a pen basically, and just be more definite about stuff. So I'm going to do that because I'm pretty used to just using a pen anyway. But I'm also going to talk about, I'm going to pretend like the reference is like on location. So I just found a picture of a castle. That's what I searched for. And I wanted to have something that kind of has like reflections, just because I'm interested in that, and also just for the sake of like the page, it looks interesting, like the variety. And the picture itself is more vertical than horizontal, but it's basic enough to where I can change it up. So I'll just kind of talk about that. So, and I'm not going to like post the picture because I don't know who took it, so I don't know who to like credit. But these are studies. So yeah, if you want to follow along, just find a picture of like a castle, and if you want to have reflections or something like that. So this one was just something that popped up, and then I wanted to do something that had like a different perspective, so I did this. This one will most likely be black and white, but I'm going to start with like a pencil just from like the reference. Like there's a line that goes like this, so that's important. Like I said, the actual orientation is like vertical, but I like the reflection. So there's the castle itself is about right here. So again, I'm treating this like if I were on location and I had like 10 to 15 minutes to sketch it. And then the reflection is basically symmetrical. So that's kind of something I wanted to play around with. And I wanted to go over like what would be important for the composition. So this is composition. So now that I have this, again, it was more vertical, but it's okay. And you could change it more. I mean, I could add some stuff, so I'm just going to add maybe like this part just to make it look a little different. Kind of like this. And the main thing is just this symmetry right here. And it doesn't have to be like perfect, but it's like the basic look of it. And so although there is like reference, I'm just gonna change it up a little. So that's the basic composition right there. And that just took a few minutes. So that's to me, like, that's the sketch. Like, that's the composition. Well, the composition is because of the border. But then the sketch is this. Like, to me, like, this is the sketch because you could go in different directions with it. So I'm going to stick with, like, the pencil. However, if I'm going to use ink to kind of get this look, because that's what I wanted to do, is show how you get this look, but like with black and white ink. Now you can also use color. It's an experiment. You just have to play around with it. It adds another layer of complexity to it because of like the color harmony and all that. So that's the sketch. And then the next thing is, if you were going to do like pencil drawing, I guess, that's kind of like a different approach where I don't really do that too often, honestly. I used to, but I prefer the ink kind of look. To me, it looks more, it has more pop to it. However, you can give yourself some notes, and that's kind of what thumbnails are good for. But I mean, I don't like, if you're going to use a pencil, you don't really need a thumbnail like as much. So just for example, you could decide that you're going to give yourself a note that this like is a value, like darker. There's reflection in the water, so it kind of goes like this. And so you can decide that, again, this is more for like preparing to do like pen and ink if you need to do this. Now, I could probably go in with just the ink, but it helps to do it in pencil. I mean, that might be the only thing like you have. The other thing is like the reflection is a little bit darker. Now you could also have a photo of this even if you are on location, but you can get a lot of life if you can get a lot of like the feel of it. That's good too. And then basically this area is just kind of foliage, and I'm thinking about like the shapes more than anything, and especially if I'm going to deviate from like the reference, like if I'm not trying to make it look just like it, and just leaving yourself some space to like make up stuff. Some other things that might be helpful are like the windows and like little details, because that gives it a sense of scale. And that'll help out because if you do it in pencil, it gives you like one more you can adjust things like when you go in to ink it. And that's pretty much it. If you wanted to make it a pencil sketch or a pencil drawing, then you could add more detail that way. I'll just use like a fine point and be a little bit more like atmospheric about it. Again, I could be on location and have done this real quick and then take a photo. And I think a good way to approach stuff like that is, let's say that you sketched this out like on location, but then you also like took a photo that looked pretty close to it. I would just stick with like the sketch. And that's why it's good to, when you're sketching something, to get like the important things, but you have to just kind of sketch, and then you'll start to see when you go from here to like something like that, like what actually you need for like your style, because that's really what it comes down to. Like it's like with music. I mean, it's what you can't just put in every instrument and like every note. It's what you leave out is really just as important as like what you put into it. So with that said, like back here, for example, I'm just going to go off of the information I have here. So I'll start to like do this and be kind of definite about it, in the sense that like this is what I want to, like the look of it. And I'll just kind of sketch around the castle. And then for you could just put this in. So these are the tones, which is to say like the light and dark. And I'm giving myself room, since I know I'm going to be doing ink, giving myself some room to make up stuff. Like, in a little bit here. I'm going to put in a few of these, but that's going to end up being like the most in focus. Same with this. So I'm approaching it in a way where I can still see the composition. But I'm going to use the ink as like the main look of it. So same with this. So one thing is like the reflection is kind of important. So I'm going to make sure I give myself enough. So in the water, for example, the reflection is actually darker than the object. So like that's a bridge and then that's the castle. Like the water itself may end up looking darker, but that's more of an artistic decision. However, like let's say that I decide to darken the water, then I would have to push these to make it look darker because everything is relative. But if I were to, for example, start to add that, like I'm not going to, because since it's pen and ink, the white of the paper like affects it a lot. Like I'm using the white of the paper as part of the drawing. So, but if I were to push that, then I'd have to push everything else. So keep everything relative. But that's why I always say to build it up gradually. Start with like the mid-tone. You could go darker with it. But if you cover up the white of the paper, you can't really go lighter unless you paint on top of it. But that's like a kind of a mixed medium kind of thing. So I'm going to put these little marks and kind of like this. Be pretty sketchy. Like I'm being pretty loose about it. Again, I'm not trying to copy the photo. I'm giving myself room to like make stuff up. So to kind of wrap up this video, I will erase the pencil. And then from here, start to tighten up the details. So this is the light and dark, like right here. And I would just tighten up the details and begin to like go into like the detail. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that it's like this size and like the look of it and stuff. I will show you the progress. So it's kind of like this. You can start to like just tighten up like the shapes. And yeah, you can always just stick with pencil. You could just do this in pencil for the look. I mean, it doesn't look bad, but like if you want it to look more like bold, then like, yeah, like this part in pencil is okay. But like if you're going to start to add more like of this detail, then you could just go in with like a pen. I just use the smaller one because I may just keep it like that, or I might want to go in with like a darker pen, and that would be like or like a thicker line. The more I can use it to like define the shapes a little bit more. But yeah, that'll be it for today's daily sketching routine. Thank you for joining me, and if you enjoy these videos, please support the channel. I appreciate it, and until next time, keep on sketching.